Okay, welcome to the, is this on?
No.
No. Is there a way to turn this on? Didn't sound, no. Oh, okay. All right. Welcome to the April Faculty Senate meeting. First thing on the agenda is approval of the March the 9th minutes for that Faculty Senate meeting. Is there any objection to, are there any changes to be made to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, those are approved. First up is my report. Y'all have been fairly quiet in the last 4 weeks. Not that I mind. So I don't have a ton to report. The main thing that you might not be aware of, I think we're pretty clear that most of the faculty has seen the strategic plan. A lot of y'all have been working on the pillars, that kind of thing. Of course, along with that is the president's AAU initiative. And so I wanted to let you know that at the last meeting of the president's faculty advisory board, which is basically the Senate leadership team, we met with the 4 or 5 people in the president prevost office who've been sort of crunching the numbers on that and have put together a large presentation on it. I mean, I think some of the deans and chairs have already seen this. I'm sure some of you will see it, you know, as we kind of go through in 2026 in the months to come. I just wanted y'all to know that that's gotten to be really, really in depth. And there has been a lot of work done to determine what kinds of measures go into receiving potentially an AAU invitation, but not just that, where we stack up to the closest things we'd have to peers in that organization right now, both in terms of kind of the sort of the like institutions, like in Missouri, for example, in terms of the big state flagship, but in kind of a rural setting, or the other schools that have been invited recently, like South Florida, to sort of get a sense of what the numbers were of those institutions that have kept them in those institutions and or gotten them into that institution. And so I just wanted y'all to know that that is being done. Obviously, in terms of which of those metrics we're going to prioritize as part of that ourselves, that will be up to the provost and president to decide that down the road. But I did want y'all to know that since I don't think that's quite so apparent to the average senator, that we are very much underway in sort of crunching those numbers towards pursuing that goal, much like we're also pursuing the parts of the different pillars of the strategic plan. Other than that, I want to give you all a couple of notes for things that were brought up. Last meeting, Aaron Ostrowski asked about an accessibility presentation. We don't know exactly the best time for that yet. I'm going to guess maybe it'll be the end of the semester or the start of next semester, possibly in May, but I'm not entirely sure. But we're trying to kind of get the best fit between meeting time and kind of useful information that's been sort of set by the university to get that before you all, the most kind of propitious occasion. But we are trying to figure that out. So you will see it either into this term or start of the fall. Along with that, Jason Gross could not be here today. So I'm going to go ahead and update you a couple of things that he sort of wanted you all to know. He is not playing hooky. He's department chair in Statler, and there are faculty awards today, there's student awards today, so he's taking part of all that. What he was going to report on were 2 vetoes by the governor. One is veto of HB 4002 and HB 5074 was the other one. If y'all want to look at that again, that's 4002 and 5074. One of those is one of the research collaboratory, and that the governor said that he was vetoing because, from his point of view, legislators should not sit on the advisory board for that. And so that's why he vetoed that part of the legislation, viewing it as a separation of powers concern between the state legislature and the governor. For 5074, that involved funding for R&I. That would be also tied to medical cannabis. And the governor apparently did not want revenue to go to general funds. Well, he was not thrilled with the way in which the revenue stream was working outside of the general funds kind of process. So that was his wording about that one. But so if you wanted to look into his formal letters on that, that's HB 4002 and HB 5074. Okay, I did want to follow up bad news with good news. And I like it, like, when y'all already do so much service for the institution by serving in this body, when y'all kind of go an extra mile, I want to kind of like point that out and kind of congratulate y'all. I thought it was notable that all 4 of the honors faculty fellows for next year or next fall are faculty senators. Joe Jones from CCAM, Anthony Peluso from Public Health, and Andreas Corsi and Jim Siegmar from Eberly. So I appreciate you all going the extra mile again to provide innovative classwork for your students. And also, the Foundation Outstanding Teaching Awards were announced, and one of the handful of all of the 2,000 faculty who work at WVU who got that award was actually one of our senators, Cody Hood, the Jeff co-chair from Eberly, was one of the recipients of that award. Finally, and I want to make sure I have this right. A lot of you have been asking me about the VPR search. So I asked the incoming provost the basics of a lot of your questions. The long and short of it probably is like, look for email next week. She's going to send out a thing probably next week about this. It'll address most of your questions. But big picture, the idea is, yes, an efficient search, but she really wants a thorough search. So you probably should not expect to hire before well into the fall semester. She's looking for this to be a very, very careful process. And so that's involved a lot of work picking out the right search firm to start with. And then, of course, it's going to play out across time. The other things you especially asked about, will faculty serve on the committee? Yes, but that's not been entirely set yet in terms of who it is. So, you can watch for more information from her about that. And will there be open forums like there have been for recent dean searches for this position? And yes, there will be that as well. So look for that to occur, as we get into the fall semester time period. And also I appreciate, just in case she is watching today, the speed with which she gets back to me when I bring up things that matter to you. I think it speaks very well of her attentiveness to faculty senate concerns. That concludes my report for today. Is there any question that you would have for me about any of those matters or other matters? Okay, moving forward to the consent agenda. As you're aware at this point, the consent agenda is used to handle regular, routine matters that are generally non-controversial. Is there anything that y'all would like to see removed from the consent agenda, which is annexes 1, 2, and 3 from the curriculum committee? Okay, without objection, the consent agenda is approved. So now we'll move forward with our committee and officer reports, starting with the curriculum committee. Kate Johnson.
Thank you, Scott. We just have we have 2 more meetings before the end of the year, and things are rolling along. I'm going to encourage people to volunteer to be on the curriculum committee. We need representation from all over campus. So that's my plug.
Okay. Any questions for Kate? Okay, please volunteer, and also thank you, Kate.
Thanks.
Next up is the Jeffco report from Cody Hood.
Thanks, Scott, and thanks for the shout out earlier. So Jeffco, we are working on reaching out to faculty that are associated or the point of contact for each of the different Jeff courses as we work on updating information in Chem. So there are almost 300 different Jeff courses that we currently offer throughout all of our different campuses. And so it's somewhat of a tall task to make sure that the contact information that's listed in Chem matches the correct individual. So if you or if one of your colleagues are associated with a course that currently has a Jeff attribute, if you could either reach out to myself or Corey, just so we can get verification of the list of emails that we currently have in Chem. There's some names that are outdated, some that are even missing, just so that way we can get an updated list so we know who to send information out to. That would be great. And so again, the purpose of this is as we update in the future, we plan on updating the Jeff component for each course in Chem by working with the individual faculty. So that way it's not a task for everyone to accomplish on their own. Please do know that if you do share contact information with us, we won't be making any changes to the contact information listed in Chem. This is purely just so we know who the correct person to reach out with as we send out that request later on. I believe that's the rest of my report. Thanks.
Any questions for Cody? Okay, thanks. Next up is the Teaching and Assessment Committee report from Ashley Sowards.
All right, so we have somewhat of a short report today. We met on March the 26th, and we have another meeting coming up on April the 13th. But just to give you some numbers from the early semester course feedback, moving forward, we really want to focus on increasing participation, both on the faculty side as well as the student side. Robert Hastings ran some numbers for us, and we had really low turnout. Looking at the full term of fall 2025 courses, only 6.1% of those courses, there were feedback or utilization of that early semester. It was at 4.7% for first 8-week courses, and then only 1.8% for the second week. But when he ran those numbers, that was still open, so that might be a little bit higher. So really for the early semester course feedback, just focusing as we move forward on utilization, both on the faculty side and the student. I hate to keep talking about promotion and tenure, but it's a great thing to show for your teaching kind of innovation and how you worked on your teaching to improve your courses. And then to transition to the spot, just a couple of reminders. Faculty personalization is open until April the 14th. So that will close down on April the 14th. If you do not go in and modify, it will go out as is, but you do have the option to go in and modify some of that. I just want to clarify something that I answered at the last Faculty Senate meeting. Megan Light brought up a question about if students know that their responses are anonymous. So student responses are confidential, but if those responses breach the student code of conduct, IT does have the ability to identify that student to bring forward that conduct issues if the student would breach the student code of conduct. But typically those are confidential, and the faculty does not receive which students have completed those. And then the email will be sent out shortly with the Qualtrics link. If there are any redaction requests, there will be kind of a quick turnaround time on that. So follow that Qualtrics link if you want to submit any of your comments for redaction requests. And then we do have 2 new subcommittees kind of looking at things with SPOT. One subcommittee is going to focus on those additional questions that you all have brought to us, which is great. Keep those coming. The other subcommittee is going to start looking at just the overall kind of faculty feedback on utilizing the SPOT. And that's it.
Thank you, Ashley. Are there any questions for Ashley? Okay, thanks. Next up is the Committee on Communities report from Leslie Cottrell.
Wasn't as close. So you're going to hear this from me in every meeting until the end of the semester. Chairs, we're going to reach out to you on our committees to get your recommendations for membership and committee members next year. That includes the strong members, the not so strong members, and who never showed up. That is very seriously taken in consideration by the committee as we meet in the next couple of weeks and into May to construct our new membership. Chair-elects, we will also be getting with you to make sure you have what you need to go into that chair position for the coming year. And if answer any questions you might have. And then just a reminder in terms of the volunteer survey that'll come out of the Faculty Senate office. Senators, non-senators, it'll ask you questions about previous leadership. We look at that in terms of who might be great candidates to chair or chair-elect if something changes and we don't have someone in that spot. And lastly, we might have some committees that didn't get a chance to meet, their charge changed, something like that, and we factor that in. And so we might have someone sit in and lead us again into the coming year. Not sure if that's going to be the case this year, but just if you see a similar name, that's probably what's going on, to be that bridge. That person becomes our bridge into the coming year. That's all I have.
Any questions for Leslie? Okay, then please, the BOG report, Leslie.
All right, that's going to be quick. April 16th and 17th is our meeting. Just as a reminder, this is a really important meeting. All of them are really important, but this is particular. This is when we're talking about finance models and things of that sort. We have started to have the subcommittee meetings. So again, take a look at that website, make sure those are posted. And if you have any questions, reach out to Scott and I. We will bring it up. June, Scott and I've been asked to do the faculty presentation. So we might be pulling you, we haven't met to figure that out. We do that every year. We have that opportunity. So this year it's in June. And each year it's slightly different. So as we meet to figure out what is that particular message we want to send, we'll reach out.
Any other questions for Leslie or Leslie in this role, as opposed to her previous role? Okay, thank you. I mean, I would also just stress, again, we have a lot of discretion in terms of what we want that presentation to look like. And I would just say, I think it would be very helpful, since a lot of this is presenting the faculty to the board. If it's you or somebody in your college does something that's like really unique that you think people on the board would be interested in hearing about, or research people might not even like know is out there, is important research is valuable to stakeholders in the state, please do let us know. I think kind of between the two of us, we're fairly distantly located inside WVU to get a lot of information, but nonetheless, WVU is huge, and I'm sure there's all kinds of things that even like we don't know about. So do please let us know if you think you have something that would be valuable to add to that report. Okay, now we have a bit of a different presentation, and that we have a slides and everything from the Student Recruitment and Retention Committee from Miriam and Joy.
Thanks, Scott. The Faculty Senate Recruitment and Retention Committee does not always give a report. In fact, I don't know that we have ever given a report, but we found something exciting that we wanted to share with you. In the fall, we had Foz come and he talked about enrollment, and there was a lot of conversation from Faculty Senate that was very invested in enrollment. And so I argue, if we're going to emphasize bringing students here, we should also emphasize keeping them here. So that's what my committee does when we focus on retention. So there it is. Okay. Retention is first-time, full-time college freshmen returning to the institution for their second year. The research is very clear that if freshmen come back as sophomores, they are more likely to persist until graduation and get their degree from WVU. Our retention reached an all-time high this year of 85%, which is excellent. In the literature of retention, a lot of research goes into trying to identify predictors of who is at risk. So at WVU, we know things like finances and fit and academic success all go into whether a student chooses to leave WVU. But in the field, we see things like first-generation student status, academic difficulty. So trying to identify predictors of students before they start at WVU in the fall. We use things like test scores to kind of predict how successful a student will be. The Recruitment and Retention Committee, I will give shout out to Jen Steele out of Eberly, had the idea of looking at registration. So not registration during the academic semester. What I'm talking about is incoming freshmen, when they get block scheduled for registration at NSO. So before they even start at WVU, their registration in the summer is something we decided to look into. So this is data that Evan Witters pulled for us, and you can see that we have this separated into buckets. So if they were block registered before May 1st, in the month of May, in the month of June, or after July 1st, we see kind of a correlation with the rate of return to the next fall year. So this is from 24 students that came back to 2025. And you can see that if they registered before May 1st, we had a retention rate of almost 87%, so above our average. In the month of May, it was 81%. June is 74%. And then if they registered after July 1st, 68%. So you see the step down. It corresponds to their average fall GPA. We see a similar step down progression. What I want to point out that I think is important is look at that June and July bucket. They have the lowest retention rate, but we also have a low number of students here. If we just looked at July, that's less than 200 students across the university. So we dug a little bit deeper on this data, and for this specific cohort, we see that the total number of courses completed goes down with each of these registration buckets, and the counts of Ds, Fs, or Ws in their courses is going up. So these students are less likely to retain, and part of that is because of their academic success. If we look at their spring retention into their spring semester goes down, we see GPAs going down, and Dfs, Ws are going up across their spring as well. So at this point, the committee, we decided to start working closely with Matt Matasowski, who works in WVU's data and analytics. He runs all of our modeling, and I'm working closely with Joy Carr, the director of university advising. So the three of us meet weekly to discuss the data. So we pulled FTF cohorts from 22, 23, and 24. So we have 3 years worth of data, all in the post-COVID timeline. So this would not be the impact of COVID. And we see trends for this data as well. ACT scores are going down. So our later registrants have lower ACT scores, lower SAT scores, and lower high school GPA compared with students that are registering earlier. Our first gen student status, Pell eligibility, those are going up. And then West Virginia residents by fees also go up. That is not just West Virginia residents, but somebody like New Jersey, where they get state reciprocity, they would also fall into this bucket as well. If we look specifically at the students that do not retain from these 3 cohorts, we see that their later registration is associated with poor retention. ACT scores go down, SAT scores are lower, high school GPA, first gen Pell eligibility goes up. So in those that leave the university from the 22, 23, and 24 cohorts, we're seeing that later registration is a risk factor for attrition. So Matt did some higher level analysis to confirm that the trends we're seeing in the table are statistically significant. And we see compared with those who registered earlier, those students who registered after July 1st had significantly lower mean ACT, SAT, and high school GPAs, and that they were more likely to be first generation and Pell recipients. So from this, we went down a few different avenues. We've been sharing this data with a lot of the relevant student success committees across campus. So a lot of people have already seen this. They asked us to look at a few different things. We looked at FAFSA filing and housing deposits because these occur even earlier than registration. Maybe we could better identify sooner students that were going to be at risk. The models did not add to what we had here. We looked at residency by state, family contribution. We looked at whether test optional impacted this, and then whether they had visited during a prior recruiting experience, and if that impacted the likelihood of retention once they were here. None of these added to our current model. So right now we're looking at first year pathway and fit. We are spending a lot of time looking at college level data. So this is for all of WVU. We're trying to look at these predictors specifically within each college. So the goal this spring, hopefully in May, is that Joy Carr and Evan Witters will work with each individual unit and share which predictors are most statistically significant for those units, so that the individual units can decide if they're going to, if you get somebody that it's more likely that math scores and Pell eligibility are going to be predictors, then your unit can look at specifically those students in the June or July cohort. And then we're cross-referencing data here with exit survey and care team report. So any student that elects to have their transcript sent to a different institution indicating that they wish to withdraw from WVU and transfer to another institution, they're invited to complete an exit survey. We're going to look at the qualitative data there and match it to our survey to see if we can better understand why they're choosing to leave. And then we're going to look at care team reports in aggregate. We won't look at the individual responses there. So all of this, for those that work in retention and student success, being able to identify a student before they even start at WVU so that we can provide targeted advising and support to that student is going to be really important. And so this data is allowing us to better identify those students that might be at risk and deliver those really targeted interventions. So even if we only look at late June and July registration, that could be 500 students at WVU we know are at risk, and we could do more to support them. So that's our goal there. And I think that's it. We have any questions?
So Jason Hedrick, School of Medicine. Miriam, that was a wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed it. I am a little bit curious about, so those students that are coming for orientation, and maybe you said this, but there was a lot of data there to process. So when they actually come for orientation, what are the techniques that you and your committee are thinking about when they're actually there the day of? I think back to when I was a college freshman and I ended up in I came for orientation, I ended up in a couple science courses that I definitely was not prepared of, that I found, prepared for, the first couple weeks I was there. So I'm just kind of thinking about, what are the, and I don't know if this is kind of a malformed question, so maybe just you can react to it. Like, what are your thoughts about how those advisors, those days they come to campus, are actually prepared to help those students?
Okay, so what I'm imagining is that the units will get a list. So we're going to give them the identifiers or the predictors that relate to their college. Our data lead, Matt, is also going to be able to give them the individual 800 numbers or names of potential students that would be at risk based on all this analysis. My hope is that the advisors at that time can kind of talk to the incoming students and, for lack of a better term, like a vibe check. So something that could be happening is if we have a later registrant, then that could be that they're a first gen student and they don't realize all of the different things you have to do to come to college. And so they're just kind of missing things that other students might be more aware of. So that student might need a particular form of support, as in more email reminders. A late registrant could be a student that had gotten several offers and they were waiting to hear from other institutions and we were not their first choice, but they were waiting. And so they ended up registering late because we were their last choice. Then maybe that risk could be they're not as engaged on campus because they wanted to go to Pitt. And so they're just not as excited to be here. They're not engaging in courses or on clubs on campus. And that level of support could look different. Let me connect you with these clubs in your area of interest. So I think it's going to have to be at the individual level to have conversations to figure out potentially what the issue is. I am hoping, and I know Joy wants to do this too, that this coming summer we can start to tease some of that out, working through the units. The housing team is working with us. They want to get on board. I know Adventure West Virginia wants to do stuff with this data. So I think this coming year, like my goal is to get this in front of people as early as possible so they could do something this summer. But I think collecting what people are going to be doing, whether that's a support course for students or just more targeted advising, and then also trying to collect data once they're here about who is it that actually ends up leaving and why are they leaving. So those are the thoughts.
Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, Lisa Costello online, please.
Hi, yeah, Lisa Costello, School of Medicine. Could you just speak to how like student athletes might be into this? Just in the NIL era, we see so many students coming here and then they might be transferring for athletic reasons. And so were those students separated out in this data? Or could you speak to that? And congrats to the men's basketball team on winning the crown. But if you could just speak to the student athletes and how those numbers might be impacting what you presented. But great job.
Okay.
So I
Um,
can speak a
oh,
little
Joy,
bit
yeah,
about
go
it
ahead.
if you'd like me to. On the Morgantown campus, and we can certainly filter by demographic group, which would make it easier to tell. But on the Morgantown campus, for retention purposes in the freshman year, that doesn't tend to be an issue. Now, WVU Tech, absolutely, they have student athletes who are coming in, and as soon as they get a better offer to play, they're immediately going elsewhere. Our problem with athletes on the Morgantown campus tends to be if they, for example, many members of the baseball team got picked up by Major League Baseball, and so they left, right? So ours tends to be something like that, and we can't really impact that. That's what they want to do. But we can certainly filter by veteran status, by athlete status, or any other student demographic that we collect to get a full picture.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Pretty good. And I'm just curious, Eugenia Pena from Davis College. So I'm kind of curious. This will sound kind of a very statistical question. However, you're talking about uniqueness of some of the cases. You presented actually a relation one-to-one. So we have this one, the ACT related one-to-one to the date. Have you seen the interactions? The interactions are going to be the individuals. The interaction between the predictors. That actually interaction kills individual factors.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we're talking about the model, the interactions of the predictors within the model.
Yes.
Okay, yes. So that is a question for Matt Matasovsky. He has been waiting for somebody to ask him for a question on the model. Unfortunately, he is out today and he tried to get on Zoom, but it was spotty service. So Eugenia, I will take your question to Matt and ask him for a response there, and we can send it out to you and anybody else that wants it. I can't speak to the model that he used there. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Hi, Mandy Wyrick with the School of Social Work. So my question is, have you also looked at other factors such as disposable cash for things like meal plans, the extra fees for being, renting the monthly, microwave refrigerator combo in housing and those things, and not having the disposable cash for all those like little add-ons that adds to quality of life? While students are trying to be students in the academic realm, but also maybe fighting hunger and access to food and those sort of things. So are you looking at those factors as well?
Things like cash on hand is not something that the university data team has. So we're limited in what data the institution itself would have. So I don't have that.
Well, I mean, like the meal plan that they choose maybe being the cheapest and then trying to kind of stretch dollars for food, or who's accessing food banks. Do you make it from month to month? That would maybe be a way to get into that. But I know from, my kids and in their friend group, that was certainly something that contributed to whether or not they were successful as students was, could they afford the extras in order to stay here on campus?
We don't have that. We can take a look at what financial predictors we could include into the model, and I'll mention that to Matt for our next round of analysis. Thanks. Cody Hood is online. Go ahead, Cody.
Hi, thank you. So I know a lot of the discussion that you've already shared is related to how this data could potentially be used in being distributed to like the colleges to reach out to students that have already been accepted and have chosen WVU. But has there been any looking into how this information can be used for like recruitment and application review purposes, in the way that we can identify students that have not even necessarily potentially applied to WVU, but would have a high likelihood of being retained if they chose this university? And kind of the counterpart, how that's going to be handled if someone's identified as being at high risk due to some of these parameters?
For your latter question, do you mean if we identified them, would we still accept them into the institution?
No, not necessarily that, because obviously there's a lot of factors that go into play, but more so just I didn't really treat these as two separate questions, more just as one where we can use this as a process to improve our recruitment, not only improving the way that we're able to retain students that are currently identified as high risk in these categories.
I don't think we have given that any consideration yet, and that's something we can take back to the committee to kind of think through how this model and analysis could help us improve our recruitment as well. I think when students know that they have targeted support on campus, that helps with recruitment, so we could certainly push that more. Joy, do you have any thoughts on this one?
So I know that admissions is looking at potential bottlenecks in the process, because keep in mind, this isn't necessarily when they come through new student orientation physically, because that is a process that is separate from the block scheduling that students are part of. That is triggered when they register for new student orientation. And so the registrar could be block scheduling them in March and April, for instance. So one thing that we could look at and are looking at is in the pipeline, in the admissions pipeline, from the time they say I'm interested in WVU to the time they're actually on campus, are there bottlenecks in the process that might keep them from getting that block schedule as early as possible? Because then that also triggers other things, right? Another thing that we're taking a look at are dates that other support units have related to when students are getting a block schedule or when they come to campus. So for example, Choosing Your Housing assignment has a final deadline in very early July. We already know that in some cases, if you're, let's say, a first generation student and you have a block schedule coming in July, you're already maybe twice as likely as first generation students who were block scheduled prior to May 1st to not retain here. And now if you're getting your housing assignment, you don't have your choices anymore, right? All of that's been shut down. So there's a lot of opportunity here to work with other support units in student life and other places to figure out if maybe some of these students are experiencing a double or a triple whammy that is increasing their likelihood of not finding their fit here just because their options are so narrow. We could also look at potentially moving up the date where students are getting that block schedule based on certain factors. That's something the NSO team is looking at now. So there are some interesting avenues on the admissions side, which would relate to recruiting and telling those students when things were available to them and what they needed to do to secure a good block schedule, for instance. I hope that answered your question.
It does. It just sounds like the scope of the current project, which is completely fine, is within the realm of assisting students that have already chosen to go to WVU. It seems like a lot of this data could just be very beneficial to helping identify additional students that may not have even come across our plates for a variety of reasons. So it just seems like this data shouldn't be used just for the students that have already chosen WVU, but for students that have the potential to choose it as their institution as well.
I get what you're saying, and I'm sure there are going to be ripple effects once we start narrowing in on things. Student Life is putting together some focus groups of these students who will be coming this summer so that we can start talking to them about why did you end up in this pipeline so late, and design some really good questions to try to get at some of the nuance about why students may be coming through at the time that they do and what we can do about it.
Thanks, Cody.
Hello, Joe Jones, College of Creative Arts and Media. Miriam, thank you for the report, historic report, first one from your committee. Thank you to Joy as well for your guys' service on this. I'm just curious about how does WVU compare to our peer institutions when it does come to retention? Like that 85% number sounds good. Like what is that? How is that looking kind of comparing nationally?
My experience is that we have been climbing significantly, and compared to similar institutions in the Big 12, that we are getting to the average. Joy, do you have any comments on like specific numbers from institutions?
So my comment is probably going to be unsatisfactory. I know that every university says they're unique, but we really sort of are. So we're not an open admissions school, but we let a lot of students in. And so for that reason, and because we're a little top heavy on out-of-state students and other factors, we don't compare quite as easily apples to apples to other institutions. Also, I think what's unique about the research that Miriam is doing, they don't check by these buckets of when students are receiving a schedule. So in that aspect, we're pretty unique with this research. It's the best retention we've ever had at WVU, but it's really difficult to get an apples to apples comparison to other universities, unfortunately.
Okay, and that actually kind of relates, I guess, to my second question, or the follow-up to this would be, like, I'm glad you guys are doing this, and it's great. We're going to identify specific factors. Like, what would we take as a win? Like, what would be the minimum number you'd be like, okay, like because, mathematically, some people are just not going to be able, their college is not for them. They figure that out. Like, what would you say for WVU, since we are a special institution, like 90% is probably as high as we could get, or like, what are you thinking as far as like an ideal number?
Joy, do you?
I won't hold you to
So-
it. I'm just
So
curious.
yeah, to be honest with you, so Matt Matisowski does an excellent job of reining us back in when we get too excited and try to put too fine a point on things. I have learned in the years of working with retention that setting a specific percentage for the group as a whole is not a great idea because you can't control for things like when the federal government decides to completely change your federal student aid application. We're seeing ramifications from the bill that was passed about higher education. I absolutely expect that to have some kind of an impact going into the 2026 2027 year. We're working with financial aid to understand what that means, but there are going to be implications for student aid. There's just so much that's out of our control that I think setting a percentage for ourselves is not a great idea, which again is not satisfactory because I truly want 100%. But as you pointed out, there are a lot of reasons why we're never going to be at 100%. One good thing to note is that we're getting the research back on the reasons why students say they leave WVU, and we're also cross-referencing that with the care team to say, okay, of these students who didn't come back, did, I don't know, 25% of them end up on the care radar at some point during the semester, and that's going to give us a lot more nuance than just the demographic data that WVU can provide. I'm hoping that this research will give us real insight into that 6-week window that we have never been able to crack with academics and success before, where if they don't come to class, I can put them in front of the best orientation teacher, the leading person in their field, the most dynamic instructor. But if they're not showing up in the first 2 weeks, none of those success measures can take hold. So I'm really hopeful that as we identify these students coming in, our student life partners and others within the first couple of weeks before the semester has even started might actually be able to make a little headway so we can get them in front of you and others who do such a good job of keeping students engaged in class. Does that sort of help?
Joy, that was a very satisfactory answer because the reason I'll say that too is like, I don't want you guys to beat yourself up. I think 85% is such a great number. If my own students who I think like, do you actually belong here? Like, and this is my problem too with sometimes retention talk. We're going to do everything we can. Some students should not be retained. Some students, this is not for them. We should let them go. So it does sound like you guys are being realistic about this, that we can't keep them all. That was a very good answer. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
What I would say is when I started in 2018, I had a big focus on retention. And there I think we were closer to 79%. And Guy had said, let's get to 85. And I was like, we're not getting to 85. And we made it to 85. We had a blip around COVID where we changed a policy on probation and we had a big blip to like 82 or 83. And even then I was like, I don't know if we'll get to 85. We made it to 85. And I think with the incoming demographic cliff, and all the impacts of the long term of COVID in terms of lower math scores, lower reading scores, I think if we can maintain 85% for the foreseeable future, I think that would be incredible. But what I'm really interested in is using this data to identify those kind of bottlenecks that Joy is talking about, where if they're leaving because they didn't get the right housing, can we get them on wait list for a better housing? I want to see policy changes come out of this. And even if it doesn't drive up the number, we know that we can hold it. I think that would be awesome.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Eric Horstick, Eberly. Sorry to keep the Q&A going. But I mean, it's really fascinating data, and I can only imagine what your office was like as these really clear trends started coming out. But I'm kind of curious, so these institutional numbers are incredibly strong. To what degree of subdivision can be done before it's burdensome? Because I'm curious, like, because for the model or even for the purposes of policy implementation, if we see breakdowns across colleges, we probably can't go down as far as units. But like, where is there variation, and maybe where is there already places where these trends are not observed? Is there something different there? Like, there's ways that if we, parse this out, maybe to campus, college, something, maybe again, the data will illuminate areas of strengths, or maybe there's areas where resources have to be focused. Or again, maybe there's places where this trend isn't as significantly potent, and what's different. And, I mean, there's just other ways that, you know, with a little more parcelation, maybe we see some other things to investigate that help resource allocation or, you know, again, dig into, is there something not inconsistent, something additional somewhere else that maybe is buffering?
Yeah,
So-
I know, like, when we're looking at this data, there are some units at the HSE where they're too small of, like, I'm thinking like dental hygiene, it's too small, this model doesn't really fit, so we apply it to health sciences. So we are seeing things where it doesn't apply in certain levels. But I do think if we can get this conversation going across campus at the unit level of looking at what's predictors, when I started in 2018, I identified for exercise physiology, we have 200 or more students coming in, first gen and math 122. Those were big predictors. So that might be too granular for this model to pick up. But I think if each unit and, you know, major starts having a discussion on their level of what they're seeing, I think we could generate some changes.
Yeah, I mean, for some units, methods to hold on to 5, 6 more students
Mhm.
could make a difference.
Yeah.
So, all right, thanks.
Yeah, Joy, did you have anything to add on that one?
Yeah, that goes along with the previous question too, because I think when we think about moving retention numbers, sometimes it gets a little overwhelming. But really, if you think about 1% of retention and you have a 4,300 freshman class, that's 43 students, right? And those 43 students would be scattered across all sorts of majors and schools and colleges. And I think the ultimate goal would be for each unit to say, okay, how could we hang on to three more students, right? 3 more students who have these risk factors identified. How could we hang on to those 3 more students? And that, I think, is what truly moves our needle at the university.
Nobody online? We're good? All right, thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you all. Next up, we have a report from the Service Committee from Becca. Speaking of, you know, trying to always put forward good news, you know, the service grants are back thanks to the beneficence of the administration. And so here's more about that.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Becca Fink Clark. I am the chair of the Service Committee at Faculty Senate, and I do have exciting news. I am here to let you all know that the community engagement grants, our internal faculty grants, are back. And so I just have a little information to share about those. So the Faculty Community Engagement Grant Program reflects the very heart of our land grant mission, connecting the work we do as faculty with the needs, strengths, and opportunities within our communities. Through this funding opportunity, we aim to support meaningful partnerships, impactful outreach, and community-engaged scholarship that benefits West Virginia and West Virginians, of course. So the 2026 call for proposals is now open. Lauren told me that the website is ready to go. You can log into on the WVU Research website. You can find the internal grants link, which hasn't been active for a couple years, and so we're grateful that it's back up and running. This year, we have a total of $60,000 available, with awards up to $10,000 per project. The grants are designed to support faculty-led initiatives that demonstrate strong community collaboration, clear public benefits, and the integration of service, teaching, and scholarship. Proposals are due May 1st, so we do have a tight timeline and should be submitted through the KC portal. There's a link on that website as well. I'm sure that we'll send out an email with all this information so you can share it with your faculty members in your departments. Funded projects will run from July 1st, 2026 through April 30th, 2027, and we hope to have the award announcements by May 20th. So our service committee is ready to go. We had a meeting and they're ready to look over these wonderful proposals that you all are going to submit. I really want to thank everyone on behalf of our committee for reinstating these wonderful grants. I was on this committee many years ago, and I just think that the value of the projects that are put forth are amazing. Lauren Prinzo and Corey Hunt, if it wasn't for them, I don't think that this would have happened, so we really appreciate them. Of course, the Provost's office for securing that funding for us to provide. Also, the Faculty Senate Service Committee, they have been patient with all the emails from me. We're not going to have the money. We are going to have the money. We're not going to have the money. So thank you. And their job is just getting to be started by reviewing these grants. So we're proud to reintroduce this program and look forward to seeing all the community initiative programs that are being put forth with these grants. So thank you. I can entertain any questions.
Becca, Catherine has a question. Sorry.
Sorry for that long walk. And it's not necessarily a question for, well, maybe. So looking at the Wayback Machine, it looks like community engagement was just one of the grants, and academic conference hosting, family travel, faculty travel development, research scholarship, advancement, those were other grant buckets. Not to
No,
grateful, but
yeah, no, that's great. So we do, we have a research committee that also had always selected those internal faculty research grants. And then we have had faculty travel grants. Everything you're saying is part of that internal grant program. So currently, the only funding that we have is for community engagement, but we're hoping that we have so many people that are excited about the projects they're putting forth that we'll be able to hopefully secure funds for those other internal grant programs.
okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks. President Benson is away, so we only have one guest report today from Interim Provost Paul Kreider.
Thank you, Scott. I just wanted to say, Miriam, thank you for that presentation. Joy, you as well. You said 79% when you started in 2018. I remember it was 75%. We've come a long way. We have Evan Witters to thank a lot for that, as well as Joy and everybody across this campus. If a student comes to WVU, they're good enough to retain. And we need to make sure that we do our utmost to make that happen. And I'm very happy that we are where we are at 85%, Joe. That's a great number. So anyway, I do have a few announcements to make today. Today you saw some exciting news about the dean of the Eberly College. Later this summer, he will be coming to campus on July 1st. Clayton Tyne is his name. He will be serving as the inaugural Linda and Don Brody Dean of the Eberly College of Arts and Sciences. I say inaugural dean. That's the first time that that dean's position has been endowed, and by Linda and Don Brody. Clayton Tyne was known for his people-centered approach to leadership. Most recently, he served as Associate Dean of Academic Affairs at the University of Kentucky College of Arts and Sciences, where he supported strategic planning, curriculum development, enrollment strategy for the unit's 21 departments and more than 5,500 students. His research focuses on domestic conflict, instability, coup d'etat, regime types and democratization, and international education policy. Tyne's scholarly foundation has shaped his experiences for research quality, mentoring, and institutional supports necessary for faculty to be successful across all disciplines in the college. His official start date actually is June 30th, and he will follow Greg Dunaway, who will conclude his tenure as Dean of the Eberly College. And at the end of this academic year, Dunaway has served 2 terms as Dean since 2016 and plans to continue working with the Eberly College in a professorial position. I want to express my gratitude to the entire search committee, its co-chairs Evan Witters and Dean Keith Jackson. We also had great participation in this search from folks around the campus, and it shows how dedicated we are to making sure we have important processes and success at the institution. I'm sure you've already heard by now the announcement of our incoming Dean for Libraries and Press. Later this month, on April 27th, Mark Paris will join the Mountaineer family as the Dean of WVU Libraries and Press. Most recently, he served as Associate University Librarian for Scholarly Resources and Discovery at Brandeis University, where he provided strategic leadership for a multi-million-dollar portfolio encompassing collections, scholarly communication, interlibrary loan, metadata, and core library systems. Mark has also led major initiatives to modernize research infrastructure, expand open access publishing in partnership with faculty and students, and he helped to implement data-driven approaches to collection stewardship and service design. Thank you again to that committee, led by Honors Dean Ken Blemmings, and all the members of that search committee for a job well done. We look forward to welcoming Mark Paris, and at the same time, we will celebrate the career of Karen Diaz, who spent 40 years in leadership in the libraries. Dean Diaz will officially retire May 1st after spending a week with Mark Paris, helping him acclimate to WVU. So there's a lot of good news to share these days and a lot of reasons to celebrate. Spring is our awards season, and my office has been working with faculty committee members across campus to select the recipients of a number of internal WVU teaching, research, and service awards. Congratulations to Catherine Gouge, who was named the 25-26 recipient of the Caperton Award for Excellence in Teaching and Writing. This award was established in 2007 and made possible by the generosity of former West Virginia Governor Gaston Caperton. Gaston's intent was to increase awareness of the need of improved writing skills, identifying writing as a critical and cross-disciplinary skill necessary to maintaining America's competitive edge in the global market. Gouge is a professor of English in the Eberly College of Arts and Sciences, Department of English, where she coordinates the minor in health humanities. She is recognized for more than 2 decades of her work in teaching writing and rhetoric across interdisciplinary academic settings. The Foundation Award. Each spring, WVU recognizes selected faculty members for their commitment to impactful and innovative teaching. This year, the 2026 Foundation Awards for Outstanding Teaching honor 4 faculty members. Already mentioned is Cody Hood, teaching assistant professor in the Eberly College of Arts and Sciences, School of Mathematical and Data Sciences. Was honored for his dedication to curriculum revision, focused on improving student success and fostering greater student engagement in a welcoming, personalized environment. Next is Jignesh Solanki, teaching associate professor in the Statler College of Engineering and Mineral Resources. He's in the Lane Department of Computer Science and Electrical Engineering. And he was recognized for engaging pedagogy that incorporates meaningful formative assessment and feedback, and even guided meditation to help students focus before beginning rigorous technical work. Next is Eric Brock Carlson, associate professor in the Eberly College of Arts and Sciences, Department of English, who's honored for her use of real-world applications for teaching students across a number of disciplines in a wide range of courses, 13 different courses in the last 5 years, and her role in developing 2 new undergraduate degree programs. And then finally, Muzabur Rahman, assistant professor of construction management at West Virginia Institute of Technology, the Leonard Nelson School of Engineering, has been a foundational member of the construction management bachelor's degree program at Tech, where he has helped design a rigorous industry-aligned curriculum. The first-year Seminar Advisory Council, at the direction of the Office of Provost, recognizes a first-year seminar instructor who demonstrates excellence in teaching, a commitment to student success and innovation in course design. So Wen Juan, or Helen Mo, is this year's recipient. She is a graduate teaching assistant for the Fundamentals of Engineering program in the first-year curriculum of the Statler College. She is a doctoral student in Educational Theory and Practice program in the College of Applied Human Sciences. Congratulations to all of our award recipients, and be sure to watch these announcements in eNews. So Research Week is this week. WVU's 8th annual Research Week kicks off today as the university celebrates its renewed status as a top-tier R1 research institution. Tonight at 7 p.m. is a virtual event with the New York Times best-selling author and historian John M. Barry. He'll talk about the power of storytelling to shape public understanding, inform policy, and influence how science is understood in public. The event is presented by the Eberly College of Arts and Sciences School of Public Health and the Reed School of Public Interest Communications Research Laboratory. So registration is required. So that event, again, is at 7 o'clock this evening. You can find more details at researchweek.wvu.edu. And today is also the first day of Graduate Student Appreciation Week. The Office of Graduate Education and Life, as well as many units across our campus, have scheduled a number of fun events, activities, and giveaways to help celebrate our graduate and professional students. You can also find those details on the Grad Ed website. And don't forget, tomorrow night is the 3-minute thesis competition. Starts at 6 o'clock in the Mountain Lair ballrooms. I attended this last year. It was a blast. So I hope to see you there tomorrow night. You can attend and participate in the vote for the People's Choice Award. And then additional reminders, the Teaching and Learning Center has put out its call for the 2026-27 Engaged Teaching Scholars for all 3 of our campuses. The deadline for interested faculty is April 20th. And the Office of Undergraduate Research is seeking faculty mentors for the 26-27 Research Apprenticeship Program. They shared a faculty interest survey earlier this month via the listserv, but faculty members can reach out to them if they are interested or have any questions. That concludes my report. Are there any questions for me?
Good afternoon, Provost Kreider. Brian Powell from Statler
Hey, Brian.
College. Recognize this might not be the best question for you, given as in the provost office, but since you're the senior administrator here, it goes to you anyhow. We've seen that with Student Life is doing a reorganization where they're subsuming Center for Black Culture and the LGBTQ Center, which up until last year was part of your office, into a new Center for Community Connections. Curious if you know anything about the rationale for that. Is that perhaps a response to anti-DEI initiatives from the state and federal governments, or is there some other reasoning behind that?
So there's new leadership in place in the Division of Student Life, and they've implemented some organizational changes designed to better align its resources and teams with the evolving needs of students. Those 2 centers will still exist. It's just reorganized differently. I think there might be some new leadership, middle-level leadership of those 2 institutions. So other than that, I think if you have specific questions, you can reach out to Vice President Furby. He'll be able to answer those, but there's operations and services students will not change.
Okay. I mean, we've heard that at least one of the positions from the LGBTQ Center, the program coordinator position, is being eliminated, and that my understanding is that their director currently doesn't know if she's going to still be employed.
I don't have any information on that. That's a personnel issue. I'm not aware of it. Again, you could reach out to Director Furby or Vice President Furby for any information.
Just out of curiosity, can you explain what the rationale was for shifting this unit for the LGBTQ Center to Student Life from Provost's office last year?
I think the primary reason for that was that they didn't offer any academic program. They basically were a service unit serving students, outside of the academic realm, and that was the rationale for moving it there in the first place.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So Matt Valenti, also from Statler College.
Same department too, I think.
Same department, yeah. So different question. I wonder, do you have any updates for us on digital accessibility? And the reason I'm asking, I believe there's a critical date of April 24th coming up. And we as faculty, we haven't seen a whole lot of messaging from the university about this. We did get a little bit from our college, but I was wondering is there anything like critical that we need to know now about that date?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that we hired a digital accessibility specialist. I'm going to say Erin Kelly came on board about 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago. I can't recall exactly. And she is now working with a selected group of faculty across the university and with the provost office and with the Office of Student Accommodations. And they are working on the digital accessibility policy, which is soon to go to the University Planning Council for approval, as I understand it. I have seen the original draft of that, and it's gone through a couple of iterations. So I think right now the work is basically to get that policy approved, prioritize planning for digital accessibility across the institution, finalize all of those things in terms of policy, and then start to work with the units and work with faculty. Faculty can start to look at what they can do is they can access the syllabus templates. You can find those on the Provost website. And then there's also a PowerPoint about digital accessibility at digitalaccessibility.wvu.edu, and this will give you more information. But we don't have to be completely digitally accessible by April 24th, but we need to have a plan and need to know where we're going and what our strengths and opportunities are. And so that's the goal at this point, is to just get people together, figure out where we need to go, and we need to look at our website content to see what needs to be improved on immediately. Okay, that's kind of where we are. Does that answer your question, Matt?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I think if you want to reach out to Erin Kelly, she'll be happy to talk to anybody if they have any questions. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
I would also just note, in case y'all don't know her, that's Kelly with 2 E's. It's not the way it's often spelled, so just, you know. Okay, so moving on to Senate business. We've now reached the section of the agenda tied to Senate elections. The first part of this section of the agenda will be candidate statements from the 2 candidates for Faculty Senate Chair-elect. Keep in mind, this is for Chair-elect of 26-27, Chair 27-28, past Chair 28-29, and service on the Board of Governors as faculty representative from 27 July to 29 June. So that's what this is. So first up will be Library Senator Catherine Fonseca.
Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Fonseca. I'm an associate librarian here at Downtown Campus Library here in Morgantown. I've been at WVU a relatively short time, coming up on just 4 years. And I very much believe that shared governance, that is true shared governance, and not its lip service, is the lifeblood of a healthy higher education institution in pursuit of the research, teaching, and service missions that distinguish us uniquely from the corporate world. It's my opinion that sidelining faculty, staff, and student input in institutional deliberation and decision-making carries a strong correlation with many of the worst trends and crises we see in higher ed today. I was really honored to be nominated to Faculty Senate Chair and wanted to briefly share with you all why I accepted that nomination. First, I believe strongly in the importance of running a contested race and wanted to avoid an uncontested election for a second year in a row. In light of our loss of voting rights on the Board of Governors, I think a robust election process is particularly important to signal the health of faculty governance and our readiness to reclaim that voting power. Second, I know one of the many fallouts from academic transformation has been an increase in service load, given our fewer numbers and the loss of senior tenured faculty who typically have greater flexibility to take on such a huge service role. As a faculty member outside the tenure track with less pressure in my evaluation criteria, I felt obligated to step up in this time of need. I would also say librarians tend to have a strong calling and penchant for service, sometimes to our detriment as a feminized and chronically underpaid profession. But I'm struck by how this service orientation makes librarians especially well suited for the role of Faculty Senate Chair. The library is often discussed as a third place where those of any discipline can gather, share ideas, find common ground, build coalition, and meaningful connections. A librarian serving as Faculty Senate Chair can operate in much the same way, grounded in a role that is not tied to any single constituency, but instead committed to the whole, cultivating an environment open to thoughtful, productive dialogue on the university's future, offering a space where coalitions can form to work collaboratively toward shared goals, and serving as a transparent conduit between faculty and administrative leadership. As Faculty Senate Chair, I would have 3 starting priorities. First, reviewing the mergers of academic transformation. By the time of my Senate Chair appointment, new administrative leadership will have had time to settle into their roles. While I understand that both senior leadership and to some extent our own faculty have sought distance from that difficult process, a direct postmortem on academic transformation is now necessary to safeguard WVU's health. The culture action groups are a positive first step in addressing the morale, reputation, and institutional culture piece. However, we also need a focused review of the logistics and outcomes of the 2 major mergers, the College of Creative Arts and Media and the Division of Land Grant Engagement. These units have stabilized and we have had time to catch our breath. It is now time to identify pain points and iterate for improvements. Second, discussion on the pursuit of AAU membership. Following the challenges of academic transformation, I have been excited and optimistic about Dr. Benson's first year. That said, I was surprised by his repeated call to pursue membership in the AAU, or Association of American Universities. While appealing in many ways, this goal must align with our institutional priorities and values. Achieving AAU membership will likely require significant reprioritization of faculty efforts and budgetary resources. Before committing fully to this pursuit, we must carefully consider and discuss whether it serves the best interests of our particular faculty and student body, rather than simply enhancing institutional prestige or academic clout, as our students might say. Such conversations are particularly important given AAU's current composition, which is disproportionately private universities with only a small minority of public, land-grant, or state flagship institutions. And third, vigilance around the newest wave of EdTech. The AI-powered EdTech boom is already at our doorstep. New products, sure, but the same often empty promise to solve all of academia's problems. Without clear oversight on acquisition decisions, we risk overspending and further compromising student privacy through surveillance features rebranded as learning analytics. Faculty must play a central role in evaluating and guiding these choices, questioning the value and practicality of new tools before acquisition or continued subscription. Instructors often struggle when technology does not align with our needs, while staff and administrators cannot make informed decisions without first understanding faculty use. I would like to see more active dialogue and renewed attention between these two groups on IT add-ons that shape our instructional environments. These priorities are based on my own observations of high need, but of course I would take my time as chair-elect to gather insight from the different constituencies regarding matters of highest urgency or concern to you all. I'm committed to listening, collaborating, and taking actions in ways that reflect our shared values and strengthen WVU. Thank you for your consideration for the Faculty Senate Chair role.
And now we'll hear from Embry Senator Eric Ristic.
Thank you, Scott. So for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Eric Horstick. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Biology. I've been here since 2019 and also serve in the role as associate chair of grad studies for the department as well. So in my professional roles here, I have been well grounded in both the research and teaching spaces. But really here today, we're kind of focused on talking about service. And for me, service has always been really important. For me, this is the space that we get to step into to try to have a voice, to impose impact, to have an impact, to kind of step up, to have a voice, to have your hand on the wheel, as it were. And maybe not to drive change as fast as we would like, but still be that kind of driver of change. And with that, and this is why I seek to serve as your Senate chair, because I believe this is a role by which we can step into affect the changes that we want as an institution. For this, I believe we do need to have a strong and well-represented faculty senate and also shared governance institutions. Because if we want to have advances of our goals, and I'll focus on one of our aspirational goals set by President Benson for AAU membership. We've been hearing a lot about this, and I'll focus on this one in particular, just because in my opinion, this is one of our goals, and whether we get there or not, or the path to it, is a faculty-centric, a faculty-focused initiative. And in order to be successful in this, either pursuit or the success of this, we need to have a strong faculty that is well represented, a culture of care, a culture of support, in which all faculty in all of our roles, research, teaching, service, clinical, across all of our campuses, colleges, and schools are represented and supported. Now, one thing to make clear is that this role doesn't come with some power to wave a magic wand to make these changes unless I've missed something. And it's really based on the relationships that can be maintained, how you interact with faculty and how you voice these concerns, these needs to leadership. And I think I am well positioned in this role. I'm motivated and highly engaged to work with President Benson. As I look at his strategic priorities, education, discovery, health, service, and experience, I see each and every one of these as areas that can be driven and enhanced by faculty. We are well positioned to work in these spaces. Also, as a biologist, specifically a neuroscientist and an educator, I think I am very well positioned to engage and communicate with our incoming provost, Wenlin, and also our to be determined, our vice president of research, two roles that will have significant impacts on the changes and discussions to come. And my goal is simple: to make sure that as our collective leadership looks for institutional growth, faculty support, safety, and growth remain a priority. Now, why me? What are my experiences? Some of the things that I will point out is at the college and university levels, I have served on shared governance and faculty welfare within this body. I have served on the university cultural action teams, and I have also served on and chaired the Eberly Dean's Advisory Committee. And these spaces have showed me the remarkable strength in our diversity, and also the diversity and shared challenges that we face across our various units and colleges. In my involvement in the research space, I have participated in and had leadership roles in major large programmatic grants from the NIH and NSF that have been housed out of the Health Science Center. And these grants have collectively brought $30 million to the state. And serving in these roles have taught me that these kind of large impact projects are driven when we prioritize collaboration over silos. And even this kind of initiative, even when Provost Wendelin was here for her open kind of interview discussion, I asked the question of how she would initiate buildings like bridges. That question initially was posed in the STEM space, but such ideas are the foundation of expanding that to kind of more diverse fields. And those are the kind of ideas that I think will drive true innovation. As an advocate, as in my role as the Associate Chair of Grad Studies, I immediately created transparent spaces where voices are heard that inform decisions. And I've learned that meeting people where they are is how we really facilitate communication and purposeful growth. And as evidence of that, one of the things that I initiated based on feedback directly from students was to generate a professional development course to kind of promote areas to discuss career preparedness, to prepare our students for career opportunities beyond just the academic space. And this idea of meeting people where they are, I think, is an embodiment of how I want to approach all my discussions moving forward if elected. And last, something outside the university that kind of embodies my drive to try to serve and contribute to greater purposes is for nearly the last 5 years, I've served as the president of the board of directors for the HOA I live in. And I'm glad that doesn't get any boos. And in this role, I oversaw the first major capital improvement project in my community in the last 28 years. I've also have been very actively working on maintaining or designing plans to maintain our long-term financial stability through very tough fiscal times. Those actions have been a lot less popular. But this role has taught me how to stay very level-headed under a lot of situations, and also how to approach solving unpredictable and complex problems. And I'll definitely highlight the unpredictable in that. So looking ahead, the current academic landscape, of course, has numerous problems. We have problems that we have yet to resolve and headwinds that we have to overcome. Yet with this, there will definitely be tough conversations and decisions to be made, but ultimately I am optimistic. We are standing at a space now with significant changes in leadership and a future that we have yet to determine and move into. And through this, I think faculty in our collective roles can have a positive impact through our shared governance institutions. But overall, I do believe that meaningful growth as an institution of higher education is only possible if our faculty is strong and well represented. Based on my record and leadership across teaching, research, and service spaces, I believe I am well positioned to work with faculty across all of our colleges, schools, and campuses. And if elected, I will spend my term listening to faculty and working with leadership to ensure that our institutional goals and faculty well-being go hand in hand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to both the candidates. Corey will be sending out the ballots later today, and that will include statements, correct? And you will have 1 week to fill out the ballots, so that, we'll know results next week. We'll now move on to the section of the elections agenda tied to the faculty representative on the Board of Governors for the position tied to health sciences and extension. We currently have one nominee for that position, that is the incumbent, Leslie Cottrell. We now have the space here to have other nominations considered should anyone wish to make a nomination at this time. This is for a position that would last for 2 years, as all these positions do, from July 27 to July 29. Are there any other nominations on the floor today? Oh, I'm sorry, I was already thinking about chair in 27, sorry. July 26 to July 20. No other nominations. Okay, the nominations have concluded. Congratulations, Leslie. Finally, I'll note that, yes. Finally, I'll note that part 3 of the elections agenda has to do with the Faculty Senate Executive Committee. For any of you who are not aware, this committee primarily meets as kind of a trial run for every Senate meeting and a location for smaller groups of faculty to interact with the administration on a monthly basis. There is a candidate form on your agendas from that Corey sent out last Thursday. And when is that form due to be turned in? Friday, okay. So if you are interested, please turn in the form by Friday of this week. And then we will go through that again, the email kind of ballot again for this body. I mean, it definitely is a valuable body because often these meetings here, given the nature of what you have to put into them, and there's much more of a time crunch here than there is in the executive committee. So if you're interested in longer conversations, more detailed kind of freewheeling conversations, or hopefully not too freewheeling perhaps, but I don't know, depends on your case, I suppose. The executive committee might be for you. So please fill those forms out by Friday if you're interested in serving in that capacity. That brings us to the end of the election section of the agenda. Is there any new business today? Which one? We'll get to the microphone first. Senator Joe Jones.
All right. Since Provost Kreider mentioned Karen Diaz, I wanted to bring up this event. The WVU Humanities Center on April 21st from 5 to 7 p.m. is hosting an event called Tell Me More, Hope and Music. It'll be a discussion about music. There'll be a live performance and kind of how music ties to hope, but it's also a reception for Karen Diaz for her retirement. So there will be wine, there will be snacks. You don't have to register, but so we have enough wine, that would be great if you could. So please keep that in mind on April 21st from 5 to 7, Hope and Music from the WVU Humanities Center, and also celebrating Karen Diaz. Thank you.
Brian or Ron, or
I'd like to recognize a student to speak. Okay.
I assume that's
Eva Valentine from Out in STEM, the LGBTQ student organization for students in STEM fields.
Excuse me. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ava Valentine. I represent the WVU chapter for OSTEM as the club's vice president. I'm here to present brief remarks on the merging of the Centers for Black Culture and the LGBTQ Center into the Center of Community Connections. So regardless of what statements the university makes concerning the respecting of minority students or fulfilling their needs, the actions of WVU speak louder than their words. Merging the Center for Black Culture and LGBTQ centers shows that WVU is willing to strip resources from individual groups serving marginalized communities in the name of political theater. The university has not addressed concerns about ambiguity concerning merging under the Center of Community Connections, namely whether Black or LGBTQ students will be able to access specific services or how visible they will be under the umbrella of this larger student org, that being the student engagement and leadership, or lack of visibility, or how a lack of visibility will contribute to a lack of student awareness of important services that they may need. I cannot speak directly for the Black Cultural Center, but I am familiar with and aware of that the LGBTQ Center provides STI screenings, Naloxone, drug screenings, sexual health resources, and counseling services. These services, in some circumstances, can save lives. A lack of timely communication concerning funding and ability to advertise services or provide specialized community for marginalized students plays into a larger cultural shift towards more open discrimination and the tolerance of discrimination of racial and GRS and minorities. Rather than taking a stance against this shift, WVU's actions have shown that the university is willing to capitulate to racist and homophobic outside pressuring, rather than standing up for its students in attendance. Students such as my colleagues and I see these actions, and we are able to draw conclusions about WVU's support or lack thereof for the students who make up the backbone of this collegiate community. We see you, we are disappointed in you, and this does not bode well for encouraging students to choose WVU for further attendance. Thank you for your time.
Ron?
Hi, Ron, Ron Reister, Statler College, also a current faculty fellow of the LGBTQ+ Center. I would like to recognize a student as well, Leo Cevallos from the Rainbow Coats, which is the LGBTQ's professional student group for the med school.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to listen to the students here. Thank you. So my name is Leo. I'm with Rainbow Coats, the LGBT medical student organization here at WVU. And I'm also here to speak on the dissolution of the LGBT Center and the Center for Black Culture. When I first applied. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. So when I initially applied to WVU for medical school, the first thing that I looked for was whether or not they had dedicated LGBT student resources. It was a huge factor in why I picked WVU in the first place. And I'm not alone in this. This is a very common thing for LGBT students to do, and it's a really powerful recruiting tool. And I know that with the dissolution of the LGBT Center, at least one of my friends is currently planning to transfer to Marshall. I watched him send an email to Marshall. This is currently losing students as we speak. The atmosphere in the LGBT community is pretty troubled. People are really scared, and I don't think that the university has done anything to alleviate our fears. My partner is a student worker at the LGBT Center and a member of the Black community. Well, I suppose I should say he was a student worker at the LGBT Center. We haven't been told whether or not he's going to get to keep his job. We don't even know if the director of the center is going to keep their job. I heard allusions to new leadership earlier today. It's the first time anyone at the center is hearing about it. This instability and the poor communication on the part of WVU is disproportionately harming LGBT students and Black students at the university. The Black community, from what I've heard, is also pretty worried. I've heard students say that they're worried about the lack of funding for their yearly traditions and for events. They've been here longer than the LGBT Center. They have a lot more traditions to keep up, and they're really worried about whether or not Community Connections is going to be able to handle all of their specific needs. Rainbow Coats has been working closely with the LGBT Center over the past couple of years. They've done things like provide transportation to wellness events for us, offered educational materials, HIV awareness. From the outside, you might not be seeing the huge amount of work that the LGBT Center has been doing, but they've been serving an increasing population over the years, especially where they've recently moved to the mountain layer. They're seeing hundreds more students than before, and they're doing things like connecting people with LGBT-friendly physicians, offering HIV testing kits, naloxone, counseling, substance use, housing. Most of what they spend their time doing is getting housing and food to students. And we haven't been offered any guarantee that Community Connections is going to take over these life-saving programs and events and resources that the LGBT Center offers. So given the overwhelming need for our community, I ask for the faculty to advocate for us and include us in all future conversations about this. We need administration, we need teachers, We need faculty to consult us and to work with us in the future direction of these programs. Please, will you help work with us to keep our programming, our funding, our resources, our workers, and our students at WVU? Thank you.
Kelly.
I just wanted to provide a little clarity. I'm the director of the Center for Women's and Gender Studies. And so the director of the LGBTQ plus LGBTQ plus Center does have a faculty appointment. And this for me is particularly crucial that they have moved her appointment around and she does not know whether she'll be continuing. And as faculty, in terms of shared governance and appropriate policies, she is still in limbo. And I'm just very concerned about that. And I just wanted to bring that up to everyone's attention.
Ron.
I'd also like to speak on my own behalf. So as a gay faculty member, it is important to me as well to see representation and to see support at the institution. This feels very much giving into the anti-DEI rhetoric. It makes me feel less comfortable to do what I do here at this institution. Also, the LGBTQ Center does not purely serve students, it serves the whole population of the school as well as the community. So for example, it provides training on a lot of issues that are relevant to faculty to know how to do their jobs more effectively and be better allies for their students. The absence of a dedicated unit is going to affect other faculty like me when it comes to decisions about whether they choose to stay at this institution. Thank you.
Joe.
I would like to thank the students first off for the bravery to talk on this issue. I am very upset by this, and I'm kind of confused. I know the administration doesn't come to Faculty Senate for every little choice they're going to make, but this seems like a big one. So I wonder if we could get some kind of accountability, call them to kind of justify themselves, what these changes actually mean. I'm here for my students. I'm not here for administrators moving stuff around for political reasons. So I would like some communication that I can bring to my students who are affected by this. And this also affects me personally. So yeah, I don't know, like, can we call somebody to come in and talk about it, these decisions? I know Paul's here, but like, I don't know, somebody
Right,
who
but-
had a direct decision.
Well, so my question is going to be, since this has been moved to Gary Furby's shop, would it be appropriate to invite Gary Furby? Okay.
Yeah, that would be great. Like, I think as a Senate, that would be great to hear those reasons. Yeah,
Sure.
Thank you.
Daniel.
I'm Daniel Brewster. I'm a senator in the Eberly College. First off, I want to thank you too for speaking. I can't imagine what it may took to come here and speak today. I'm an undergrad at this university, and I came here as a freshman and never left. And much of what I had when I was here were some signs on some people's doors that said safe zone. And I remember Anna Elfenbein's door, and I remember Melissa Latimer's door, and these people who made me feel safe and secure on this campus. Saturday was 15 years after I attempted suicide in a very public way, in a way that this university knows a lot about. It was in result to very overt LGBTQ plus hostility, something that I've experienced, the better part of my career. It's laughable to me sometimes when I hear this rhetoric about higher education being these incredibly left-wing institutions, because even though I love this state and I love this university greatly, I've never found that to be true here. I think that there are tons of great programs, and there's great people, and there's those Anna Elfenbeins and those Melissa Latimers and Jim Nolan's, people who really kind of paved ways for me, and I've aspired to do that as well in my career. Wednesday, so that was 2 days ago for me, 15 years ago, and Wednesday is 15 years since I came out. I wasn't out as an undergrad, and it's inspiring to see you. And I think the programming of the LGBTQ plus Center I went to an event they had 2 years ago where we were in the Mount Lair ballrooms, and they had the same event this year. And it was, I remember standing there with Amy Root and Kim Floyd and saying, like, we would have never had this when I was an undergrad. You know, that wasn't something that we could have had here. And I mean, I knew this was coming. I knew that there was only a matter of time until the center closed. I mean, they're closing all over the country. As a sociologist, I mean, some places have made it to where you can't even teach as a sociologist in some places. And so, you know, it's not lost on me that, you know, one of the things I will say is, I think there's something to be said about refusing to say the words lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, and not wanting that on a sign or on anything public. Like, and I don't think that that's reductive to just this institution. I think it's something that's, you know, in many different places. And some of you know this, one of my teaching assistants was beat up earlier this semester. He was targeted by 3 guys who, you know, made comments about me, asked him if he was gay. He's not, just a little first generation sophomore from, you know, Clendenin, West Virginia. And, you know, the police got involved, and Carrie Showalter is amazing. Like, I will say, like, you know, I've found her to be one of our greatest allies on this campus throughout my entire career. But there's only so much that, you know, people like Carrie and Gary and Paul and these people can do. But having a center is something that's, you know, paramount. It's a place where, you know, some people who otherwise don't have a space can feel safe and secure. And, you know, I'm not, you know, I think Javier will do a great job with the Center for Community, Campus Community, or whatever it's called. I think he will do a great job. I think, but there's something to be said about there needs to be a place that's localized for these people. And, you know, and I think that, you know, it's, you know, I would ask us to call, you know, Vice President Furby to campus or to Faculty Senate if he would be available. But at the same time, it's like the rest of us have got to step up in ways that, like, we've really kind of stopped stepping up. I think, like, you know, like, I don't see as many safe sign, you know, things on people's doors. I think people are afraid to even put it on their doors, you know, and I think that that's something that we have to think about. There's a Lavender graduation, April 19th at 3:00 in the Mount Lair ballrooms. I would encourage you, if you're interested, you can email me. I can send you the QR code to register. You know, like, the visibility of the faculty and staff for our students is, you know, very significant. And, you know, I would encourage you to consider that. The center isn't even 10 years old. I remember, you know, being at the Blaney House and President Gee making some comment, and, you know, I responded, like, you know, like, we're the only school in the Big 12 that doesn't have an LGBTQ plus center. And that says a lot when both Baylor and TCU are in the Big 12, right? They may not have it anymore, but, you know, he instructed Provost McConnell to open that. We were literally planning a 10-year anniversary of that center for the fall, and now it's dead. And so, yeah, I've talked a lot, right? You know, I'm inspired by you too. Like, I could have never been you as an undergrad. I'm a loudmouth now, but, like, you know, still, like, Katie can tell you, like, I was sitting there, like, shaking, thinking about getting up here and speaking, because, like, you know, it's not lost on me how dangerous that is, you know, in a time like this. And so thank you all. Thank you both so much.
Kelly.
I will be very brief. I just want to sort of connect what the students were saying and what Daniel was saying to the conversations about retention earlier. We were all talking about these sort of great retention numbers from first year to second year, and institutions like the LGBTQ Plus Center and the Center for Black Culture play an important role in retention for a lot of students. Not only do they come here because of these centers, but they stay here because of the support that they get from those centers. So if we're going to be talking so much about retention and touting our retention numbers, and then getting rid of some of the institutions that help to shape that retention, just to me, I mean, I teach in women's and gender studies, and so I feel these sort of existential threats and anti-DEI things very viscerally. But if we recognize that these centers have academic benefits and retention benefits and help our student and separate that sort of ideological aspect to recognize the real good work that we're doing for our students. I think that's the conversation that we need to have. And I'll stop talking, so.
Mandy?
I'll try to get through this without crying, but I'm really proud of you for standing up here. This is the mom in me that's like so emotional because when I graduated with my MSW, I participated in the first Lavender graduation here at WVU as an ally. And at the time, my son was in that audience. My son and my daughter were in that audience, and they got to see me participate in that Lavender graduation as an ally. And they knew that they were growing up in a safe place. Their friends knew that they were in a safe place. It was an opportunity for me in a very public way to say where I stood as a human being. And it gave them a safe place to be. They knew that the flagship university of the state of West Virginia that has a very large LGBTQ community was supportive, and that they were a place that they could go and have support and resources that they may not have at home. As a senator and as a faculty member, I'm concerned by the lack of transparency about these decisions, and that we're just hearing about them now here at the end of the school year. We have had all of this hiring this year, all this transformation this year. And why was this not a part of the conversation? Was it flying under the radar? We really need to be bold leaders in these times. We really need to be bold leaders in these times. Our children are looking to us to be bold leaders in the state of West Virginia. And we can do that for them, and we should be doing that for them. We don't have to say the words quietly. We don't have to call it something it isn't. We can be bold leaders because the LGBTQ people in this state are bold leaders. They live their lives out loud. They put their safety at risk. My son had to walk the streets of Morgantown with his friends and wondered if they were going to be a target. We need to make this place a safer place so that our students that not only go to school here, they want to stay here, have their families here, open their businesses here, be a part of this state forever, and to make it so much better than it is. We don't have to say the words quietly. We don't have to call it something that it isn't. And we need better transparency from our leadership.
Any other new business related to this topic? Okay, Corey, start typing, please. Make an invitation to Vice President Furby for the next Senate exec meeting. And I mean, I think obviously there's a lot of passion in the room today. I think it's especially given how much this is important to so many people. It would be a good idea for the Senate to hear both the reasoning and the first. I mean, also I'll say one thing, just generally speaking, like going back to the comments from earlier of Brian's initial question, there seems to be a lot of things people just don't know about this. So I think probably it would be a good idea simply to have a kind of report on, what this new center is supposed to be, why it's in student life. The decision about the merging of the two other organizations. So yes, if we could invite Vice President Furby to address these issues, to better understand what's going on. I mean, I'm not, as a functioning human, the kind of person who ever likes to speak for others, but I'm going to hope I'm speaking for all of us, and that we all, want everybody to feel safe and secure here, and make sure everybody is having a good, positive experience at WVU, and everybody feels welcome to WVU. And so we need to kind of consider both the content of what's occurring, but also messaging to sort of better understand what's going on and make sure we're putting our best foot forward for all communities at WVU. So Corey, do you please remind me tomorrow and when we have our meeting to have a rather detailed back and forth about that. Okay, so that will be a to be continued topic. Is there any other new business today? Yes.
And I'm sorry, I was slow to react because I was Googling something, and I don't want to be perceived as a joke, but maybe to be practical, since the aim of the university is to join the AAU universities, look at what is being done in that category of university in terms of centers for LGBTQ. In quick Google searches, a vast majority of AAU universities have LGBTQ centers that support that population.
I mean, I think that makes total sense as an approach to this, is sure. Good point. Okay, so yes, again, as an organization, we will try to do the best that we can and make clear what we mean to be, in the best light to all of our students, faculty, and staff across campuses and across colleges. With that, we have reached the end of our agenda. I will see you all later. We are adjourned.